The Hamburg Swings movement happened in that specifically time because it was when the Nazi took power of Germany, starting concentration camps, racism against Jews and people with color. Their techniques into ruling the country was mainly based in violence, inducing fear among civilians, conformism, and taking away people's freedom. Jazz and swing were not things that were looked up as good because they were mainly created by the culture of color, which was why they started rebelling against the government without using the same violence and weapons as the government, but fighting for what mattered. Their objective was creating awareness and consideration all around the world, using for the first time love and happiness as the main guns against the injustice and the lives taken. They wanted to stop the regime's purpose, which in that time was to divide its own people, taking their freedom and own will. This is why this movement is one that has created a big impact on how we young people see the world. Because it won't be solved with violence, but instead with communication, love, and awareness towards others. This movement used those specifically methods because the government was really violent against those who wanted to stop hurting and taking innocent lives. So when small groups wanted to create a revolution and to get people into stopping the regime, they were assassinated in the cruelest of forms. So, after analyzing the situation, this youth movement opted for using a more peaceful method. The world back then was barely recovering from economic depression when Hitler and other leaders started taking power, repressing and using violence as a way to control its country. All around Europe, jazz and swing were becoming the latest trend, influencing the young ones into freeing themselves and to distract themselves from the wars and killings that were going all around it. It was a period in which the world was a very dark and violent place. In social areas, civilians were dividing themselves into two categories. The ones that approved the Nazi regime and the Hamburg Swings, who wanted to free themselves. This caused many brawls against each other, but also awareness of the two different purposes. Politically, in Hamburg, where it all started, people could not voice their opinion caused by the government using violence. You had to follow the politics and the leaders' orders if you appreciated your life. Finally, in the economical area, Germany invested millions and depended on its own military. Thus why they continued with wars against powerful and non-powerful countries.
To begin with, the Nazi movement was trying to harshly and in a very negative way delete all the different countries or the different religions that can be mixed into the one believing that they had. It was the Aryan people, the people that were white, that have certain measurements, certain requirements, certain characteristics.
This movement truly helped eliminate the racism and discrimination barriers that the society raised around the people with darker colored skin and Jews, for example. But the main troopers that initiated the movement to spread the message around the globe ended up being persecuted by Nazi soldiers and killed with no mercy. They are still remembered fondly, and their message stayed with the next generations of liberals that fought for freedom in that country. Thankfully, the movement is not that popular these days because over the years, politics around the world have come to terms with the idea of liberalism and freedom. All these movements in the past help us get to this point where no one has to hide who they are and can express themselves freely. The movement sadly ended when the Nazi soldiers persecuted and killed all the Jew guys that were supporting the system.
I really think that this youth movement was so important because these kids were living through a phase, not even a phase, through a world where violence and wars was how you manage and how you fix your problems. And instead, they fixed their problems with love, with compassion, and with happiness. They took another culture, and specifically African American jazz and swing music, and in that kind of era and in that kind of world, it would look bad because black people and Jewish people didn't look good. You couldn't interact with them, and I think that was terrible because we are all equals, and they chose to say no. We don't respect that kind of belief. We believe that we have to act upon kindness, upon compassion, and we're all equal. So I think that that's really important. Youth movements in general, I think it's really important to know about have knowledge about this topic, because we young people, we can get together and fight for what we believe and fight for what is right without taking up on violence, and I think that's really important. And acting with love and with kindness, it's what matters, and many youth movements do that. So I think it's really interesting. And it's really interesting to know that we could change the
In my
world.
personal opinion, I think these movements are the perfect opportunity to fight for our beliefs and share a common idea or opinion with a group of people. It not always has to be violent, but certainly it has a purpose and helps society negotiate and communicate with the government.